Pat, why do you have such a disdain for the Mega Man franchise?
Okay. My disdain for the Mega Man franchise, and I went back and I for the book, I reviewed number 4, and I played 99% of it. So I can say, gave it a fair shake. Didn't give it a bad review. But I played half of them on the marathon. I went back and once I got all the bullshit out of the way of yelling at it, I went back and beat half of Mega Man 5 and I think half of Mega Man 1 marathon, and I did okay. So it's not that, I'm bad at video games. I'm not bad at video games. I'm pretty damn good at most video games. I just have disdain for the Mega Man franchise because it's a game that you have to learn where you die by dying. That's my disdain for the franchise. Out of all the games like Castlevania and Ninja Gaiden, those are games that, if you're a pretty good gamer, you could get through without having a lot of cheap deaths. Now, not entirely, but you can get through a good chunk of the game by your skill. And Mega Man, if you're a skilled gamer, you're still going to get your ass kicked. The laser traps or cheap placements of enemies after a pit that you have to know, a guy's going to appear right away, I got to jump back and then shoot him or else he's going to knock me off. There's a lot of shit like that happens in Mega Man games. And that's where a lot of the difficulty lies. There's not a lot of difficulty in learning, for example, where to use, like switching off of the weapons. Yeah, that happens, but by and large, you don't need to do that stuff. It's just learning where the enemies are going to be to get through the levels. And to me, that's sort of, you're not really using your skill that much in terms of just you're memorizing it, you're going through. And that's really where my disdain lies for fair or unfair. That's where I separate the Mega Man franchise from others.
That's fair. I like the Mega Man games, and I can't argue on some of those points, especially like the beam mazes that you have to fall through. The thing is, though, I do think Mega Man requires a great bit of skill. Once you know where
I didn't say it wasn't not skill.
Once you know where those beams are coming from, once you know where those blocks are going to be, once you know where those enemies are, it still takes a great deal of skill to do something like run through it with no death or something like that. So I think
the learning scenario isn't the traditional game learning scenario where it teaches you gradually how to beat things in a level so that you're not gonna. You can get through it.
Fair. I think
it throws you in the deep end.
I think a lot of the modern day love for the old Mega Man games comes from that. Many players have forgotten that that's how you start with Mega Man. You know, for a lot of these people who love Mega Man, the Mega Man games are burned into their brains. So there's a challenge, but to them they don't see the unfair part of the challenge anymore. And I think that's where you're coming from. Because I didn't grow up with them. Yeah, you didn't grow up with them, so So
I'm actually being the most objective of all.
You're at the 8-year-old level where like everyone was learning that stuff, and that's why I think a lot of modern people forget about that. They forget how most people know exactly where those beam mazes start, and they freeze them and they go through them, and that's it. For someone who's never been approached by them, and that was something that came up when the Mega Man Legacy Collection came out. I don't agree with reviewers who were reviewing that based on difficulty because it served another purpose entirely. However, as we get older, we need to remember these reviewers get younger. And there were people who hadn't played these games before, and they were frustrated as shit because they're like, oh my god, these are hard as fuck and they're not fair.
No.
But to people, I would say, I don't want to put an age line on it, but there are also a lot of people who have played these games their whole life who still get a challenge out of it, still try to improve their times, still want to do it in one life, but these nagging points are no longer a concern to them, so they don't think of that
as... they've mastered it.
They don't think of that as something that would completely annoy the shit out of a new player.
Sure. So I gave Mega Man 4 a good review in my book. Don't worry.
Yeah, that one... that's like the worst one, too.
Is it? I should have been harsher.
I don't mind it, but if that's the one where the weapons mean like nothing, if I remember correctly.
That was the weapons mean. You don't need to basically use any of the other weapons. You just charge the Mega Buster.